Okay, we are recording. This is Kubernetes SIG network meeting for November 12th, 2020. Tim, take it away with some issue triage. Show us how it's
You want to
done.
give me share screen?
Oh, man. Yes, I would love to. Here, you should be good.
Application window, issues, share. How's that?
Looks good to me.
Good. All right, I loaded up the first page. If we get through the first page, we can go to the second page. I did start assigning a few of them. So as a reminder for people who are here and generally quiet, when we're doing triage, we're asking people to help triage the issue, not help solve the issue. So please don't be shy about signing up to help triage. That really means reading the report, asking questions, making sure we have enough information, maybe try to reproduce it, but even that is sort of at the top of what the expectations are. We really could use help for people to help us manage this list. So please don't be shy about signing up to help triage. So let's start. Windows Cube Proxy J. I don't know if you're here, but it looks like you meant to open a pull request, not an issue. Did you use like the hub tool and just screw it up?
No, I just I just filed this issue today. We don't have a PR for it, but Rob was mentioning in the review of Andrew's
Got it.
patch for this. So yeah, I'll take a look into it and like probably next week sometime.
All right, so this isn't really in need of triage. All right, and did I assign it to you? Did it assign to you? Yep, cool. Next up, GCE issue. I pinged Bowie, Minahan, and Pavitra. Oh, there she goes. She's working on it already. Awesome. Reminder for people who are triaging, if you believe it's real, just triage accepted, and it will clear the tag. I love this new triage tag. Oh, what happened? Athena got us here part of the way, but the triage tag being universal is awesome now. Service topology doesn't reject traffic when there's no matching endpoint. This one, so this is about the beta service topology API. There's Rob's. My feeling is we don't need to fix it. I agree. This like need to fix it. Yes. Okay. So Rob, what should we do with this? Should we just close it? Should we open a new issue that is assigned one for internal? I don't know. Andrew, are you here?
Yep. Cool.
If you consider this enough of an FYI, we can just go ahead and close this issue.
Yep. Or yeah, you can assign to
me.
Can
I just assign it to you?
Yep.
ID. Cube proxy does not update IPVS rules when my pod information changes. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I can take this one.
Thank you. Double counting in IPAM. This looks like a fun one. Someone wants to help reproduce, basically saying apparently most users have enough of an IPAM space that they don't notice that we have extra counting sometimes. If that's true, then it's a bug. Nobody assigned. Anybody interested in digging into the IPAM controller to see if they can reproduce?
Yeah, I can do it. See, I'm Luciano.
I know your voice. Also, your picture popped up, so it was easy.
Great.
Network policies are blocking allowed traffic. I saw some discussion on here.
Yes,
Jay was on it. Sorry?
Yes, Matt, I was looking into that. As far as I can tell, I think they're just trying to use NetPols in a really weird way, and I couldn't reproduce it. So I wasn't really sure how to proceed with that.
they're trying, can you explain what does it mean they're trying to use it?
So like they want to block communication from certain namespaces and allow it from other namespaces, but they're not using labels. They're just trying to use that with CIDRs, just like looking at the IP addresses in their cluster and then making policies based on those CIDRs.
Are they doing something to align namespaces to nodes?
Not as far as I know.
Ooh, well, that's not going to work.
Yeah, so I pointed them at, you know, those really awesome examples of all those different netpols and stuff, but, you know, that's kind of where it ended.
They're trying to use accept as a firewall rule, which I think you complained about 3 years ago or something when this CIDR block policy was created about how that would be dangerous.
Well, I mean, that was inevitable.
So, and that's what they're trying to do here. I'm not sure logically why it doesn't work, but it does seem very strange.
Do you feel like you guys have it under control, or do you want somebody else to jump in? Like, I can take a look if you want, but probably not today.
Did they respond? I think we've got it. There was one issue that Chris helped us with, which we were a little confused about, which I think we disambiguated. So we're fine, I think.
If you need somebody to break somebody's heart, feel free to sign me up.
Yeah, Matt, just let me know if you want me to look at it with you a little bit.
Cool, will do.
Thanks, guys. Node port connection refused. This is as far as I'd gotten, so now I have to read along with everybody else. Someone wants to help
I like
dig
these.
into this?
What was the Ubuntu version again? Scroll down just a little bit, Tim.
1804.
Oh, 4. Okay, never mind.
Who was that who said they wanted? Antonio?
Yeah.
Excellent. Pod gets stuck in container creating if first attempt of CNI add fails. Multis CNI whereabouts IPAM.
Isn't it the case that CNI add, like it's the CNI's job to make sure that that works? So this would be a CNI bug. That's what I was thinking.
Only if assign this one to me. I'll take a look. I mean, what I read this as is that if the CNI add fails, that returns an error to the runtime, which should return it back to kubelet, which should stick that sandbox on the GC list and then create a new sandbox and try again.
That's what I thought too.
All
right, it's assigned to you.
Oh, so there's a depleted IP pool. The problem is the new pod gets stuck in container creating. Okay, sure. Just leave it there.
Got it. System tests related to node port are continuously failing. Are they continuously failing?
Oh, is this related to that? Hold on. Only fail on one node from the whole cluster and pass on other nodes. So he's running the client.
Running conformance against 17. Somebody wants to help.
I don't mind looking at
You
this.
can-
I'm
I'm also happy to look at this one.
Who's that, Casey?
Yeah. We've got 2
Cube
minutes.
proxy dash dash cleanup doesn't clean up IPVS rules. I think that's known true, isn't that right?
Yeah, I think there's a separate flag, cleanup IPVS, that does the actual IPVS cleanup.
Yeah, there you go.
You had a discussion 1 year ago in that issue.
Yeah.
Tim and Anand.
Sorry?
That you had the discussion in the issue that I linked about that flag. I mean, somebody was
Yes.
doing a refactor.
All right, I'll take it. Sorry?
I can take this one if you want.
Oh, all right. How are we for time? A couple more? All right. NF tables. This is a fun one. Given what we saw from NF tables a few weeks ago.
I'm on that one. I replied and asked more questions.
Awesome. Okay. You're assigned already. Cool. Thank you. Range allocator crashes if the cube controller manager, if CIDRs are incorrect for a single node.
We talked about this one last time, right?
Oh yeah, what are we gonna do? This is a deeper thing now. We don't have to do it in triage, but we should talk about it again maybe for 5 minutes today.
Yeah, I mean, it was ostensibly user error, right? And it's like, so the problem was that when the allocator detects the error, it just like crashes. And the option is we detect it and just put like an error in the logs, right? We could do that, but that's not very useful either because you just get an error in some log somewhere and your cluster is still broken.
And I wasn't here last time for this discussion. Well, let's push this onto the stack for now. We can come back to this in the regular business.
We are at 15 after, so this is probably the last one.
Okay. I think we're into the space where these are all mostly assigned already.
Not this one.
This one's not. So let's look at this one. I'm trying to look at how to find a wildcard as host. This is ingress for wildcarding.
You can assign this to me.
Okay. And the rest all seem to be at least assigned. So let's call it there. Anybody who's here, please do look at your assigned issues sometime in the next week or so and try to make some progress on them so that next week we can come back and hopefully, we had 38 open today when I searched. So it'd be nice next week if we have less next time. All right, I'll hand it back.
Thanks, Tim. I think the next one was probably pretty quick. Bridget wanted to ask about meeting schedules for holiday season.
I mean, I'm not coming to the meetings on Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve, but if other people are, cool. But I just figured I'd bring it up.
No, I think we should probably cancel those because I would guess we would be missing a lot. I know I won't be there.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So unless there are any strong objections to that, I will take an action.
I'll delete them.
Oh, or Tim.
I'll just do that right now.
Cool. Thanks again, Tim. I think that was all on that one, right, Bridget? Yes. So, Guo.
Yes. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I'm Amber. To everybody in the crowd, it's my first time in the SIG network meeting, so nobody knows who I am. I'm here with a couple of people from my team and group. We've been primarily working with SIG Windows and SIG Node kind of discussing the topic that I added here on the agenda today. So to everyone's knowledge, to kind of give a brief overview, and we have some people on the call from kind of the team working on Windows privileged containers, or just, you know, a solution for us to address a lot of the different privileged cases that are used privileged containers in Linux so far in the Windows kind of OS and containers. And, you know, some people can kind of answer further technical questions as we kind of get into the meat of it. But I'm here to kind of present a first overview. So as we all know, there's a lot of different privileged scenarios for privileged containers in Linux, where, you know, you have daemon sets and kind of all of these cases where you need access to different host resources or networking or storage or so on and so forth. In Windows, we've had kind of a model of using server silos or other isolation type like solutions or constructs to work with our server containers or our Hyper-V containers. But it's kind of not been able to allow us to do these type of privileged access behaviors with containers before. To kind of address this issue, we've come up with a new solution using job objects, which is kind of detailed in the KEP that I linked on the agenda. We can also dive into that KEP if it's easier for me to bring it up or help people visualize. But essentially, Windows job objects have existed in Windows all the time, but they're kind of being able to run like a process on the host in the form of a job object. We're doing different experiments and different kind of prototypings to enable it to be kind of brought up into the container level and using it with containerd, and then exploring options to kind of get that working in Kubernetes. We've done a bunch of different prototypes and tests so far to see if it covers the different scenarios covered again in the KEP as well. And we've had some success. The reason that we've kind of brought this to SIG networking is that there's a couple of different restrictions with Windows job objects that have, you know, caused some interesting behaviors with certain Kubernetes scenarios. The main kind of overview is that for these job objects, we have decided so far that it's best to have host networking enabled always for this privileged container solution. What that implies or means is that for scenarios where there might be mixed privileged and unprivileged containers, so one of the major ones that we've been looking at is ones for service meshes with init containers. Also, like CSI proxy, I think might be another version of this behavior with a mixed pod, and I'm sure there's many others beyond this. We would not be able to align a Windows privileged container with the pod namespace. This is due to several kind of technical restrictions that some folks on the line from my team can kind of go into detail about. But as a result, for scenarios where users might want to have different mixed privileged and unprivileged cases for Windows, then there might be kind of a break in the assumption that all pods in Kubernetes have the same IP address, because one would have host networking, another one might have like a pod namespace. So that's kind of the main case. In this route, and the way I typed it up in the agenda, there's kinds of two things that we're looking to see in the pros and cons and some discussion around in SIG networking. One option we could have is we want to see kind of what the community's openness is to Windows privileged containers having this kind of difference of requiring or allowing for host networking and a pod namespace within the same pod. Or the other option of requiring these privileged containers to be in their own privileged pods and separate, kind of in that form. The benefit of allowing the mixed case is that we'd be able to address basically the wider swath of these different privileged scenarios that people have been looking for, but there might be implications due to kind of that assumption that I mentioned before.
Thanks for that overview. Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yep.
So let me try to restate and see if I get it right. If I have a pod which has one privileged container and one non-privileged container, the privileged container will run in the host network namespace and the non-privileged will run in a private network namespace.
Yes, because we are not trying to enable host networking for non-privileged containers. That's out of scope for our cap.
Sure. So then how would something like a service mesh sidecar work if they're running in two different network namespaces?
To be clear, right? I mean, we are not recommending that. I mean, what we are saying is for daemon set scenarios, we want all containers that are running in that pod to be privileged. If in the other case where we really don't want to support a scenario where the privileged container is run, like when you have a pod, we really want to abide by the limit saying that the pod has only one IP, one namespace or multiple namespace, whatever the pod has, all the containers should see it, right? So that's where we are getting violated by if we do the model where we have one container privileged and other containers non-privileged. So we really don't want to do that model, the init container model. So we're wondering if, how do we proceed in that way? The service mesh is one scenario where it's broken, but there are many other things that will be, many other assumptions that will be broken if we have two namespaces, right?
Yes, that was my immediate fear, was I have no idea what will break if we change that assumption.
Correct. And
would it be reasonable to say that on Windows, if one container is privileged, all containers are privileged?
That's the support we are trying to get to. I mean, that's the proposal. We are saying that, hey, we are gonna kind of inherently assume that all containers are privileged, and anytime you do Windows containers, host network comes with it.
But that means, Tim, that
go ahead.
The workloads on a service mesh are going to be privileged.
Yeah, that is what it means. It's unfortunate that that's what it means, but yes. But I don't see how you can have, I don't see how mixed would be any better, right? Mixed is clearly not going to work and is much more likely to break stuff. So we could go into this in a couple ways. One would be to say, well, on Windows, the validation requires that if you set privileged on one container, you set privileged on all containers. And at least then it'll fail and force the user to acknowledge that this is a requirement. Of course, if you're injecting a sidecar, you're going to hork your users, unless your sidecar also sets everything to privileged, right? The other approach would be to just assume that somewhere deep down the stack and throw an event or a condition or something on the pod that says, hey, just so you know, I promoted you to privileged and hope that's okay. That's kind of terrifying, and I can hear the security people revving up their chainsaws. Are there other options? Is there hope that this will eventually be normalized to the normal Kubernetes way, or is it just off the table?
I mean, I'm really questioning the init container model itself, to be honest with you, Tim. I mean, so the underlying kernel doesn't support the ability that IP tables where you have feature-specific ways to control things, whereas Windows comes like this, right? So
yes. So that's a great point, and I don't actually know how a mesh sidecar would do this sort of equivalent of traffic capture that they do on Linux on a Windows platform. I just don't know Windows well enough.
I have one question: is how the containers use the network? I mean, the host pod use the interfaces, but the others, do they have PS interfaces, or how are they plumbed into the host in Windows?
Sorry, I'm not following.
Okay, so so you have two containers: the privileged that are host network, and the others. How are the other containers connected to the network of the host?
So in Windows, the network namespaces are implemented as TCP/IP compartments on the host. So we have different compartments for every network namespace in Windows. And then we have interfaces that we add into that specific compartment. And then like basically the silo that is getting created for every Argon container, or like what this Windows container, is attached to a network compartment. And on that network compartment, we add the interfaces, and that's what that pod sees.
Okay, and if you have two privileged pods in one host, both are going to share the same host.
Yes.
Okay,
So
okay.
in Windows world, we have something called as default compartment, or we call it the stack compartment, which is basically for every application that is running in session 0, we'll see the default compartment. So if you have multiple physical NICs, they all show up in that default compartment. So with the privilege container, what we are doing is we are trying to use a job object, which is run on the host default compartment. So by default, it sees all the NICs on the host compartments. That's why you are inherently becoming the host network mode. Whereas in the pod case, we create a separate silo and we create a separate TCP/IP compartment and then attach it to that silo. Now, when you're trying to combine these two, that basically violates the Kubernetes principle of like pod shares everything. All compute containers, the pod shares everything. No future job objects respect compartments. I mean, as of now, no plans. I mean, this is a fundamental change. Yeah.
It's fine to say no. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
It's not the first or worst Windows thing that we've done, right? My gut feeling is that you'd be better off requiring that all containers are privileged than splitting the compartment mode.
Yes.
And I agree fundamentally with sidecar stuff. I don't know, like sidecar is the only hammer we gave people. So obviously they've been treating everything like a nail. But maybe in the future we can do better than that. So I haven't looked at your cap. In fact, why don't I pull it up? We can discuss the options there, but my feeling from a network point of view would be if you have containers in different namespaces, it's going to be bad. And so some other mode, whether it's to require them to be all privileged or to automatically make them all privileged, I think that would be the better answer.
If I was to think that use case out though, Tim, every workload would be bound to the primary NIC and consume, you know, or whatever the NIC is on the host. It would consume those ports on the host. So you're going to have a heck of a time scaling on because the ports are going to be taken. So you can only run one pod per node, right?
Yeah.
One pod of workload that listens on port 80 on each node.
Yes. Right. Pathologically, yes. I don't think the sidecar model works here, but it doesn't work in split mode either, right?
So I'm not
sure.
sure.
Well, I was just like the requirements to binding privileged with host network to true is what I'm hearing. That means that the workloads are all going to sit on the VM's interface.
No, I mean, the sidecar still continue to work, right? I mean, whatever we are doing, see, the sidecar Envoy is still gonna continue to run inside the network namespace for the pod. The only thing we are saying is the programming that you're doing in the IP tables to redirect the traffic. In Windows, it's a different call. The init container, whatever you're doing, that cannot run inside the workload container, right? The workload pod spec. That has to be pulled out. So sidecar scenario works in this model. All we are saying is instead of doing that init container, which is basically in Linux way of doing things where they're just running one small container and in a privileged thing to program the IP tables to redirect the traffic and then die down, and then they're launching all the other pods, all the other containers in that pod. We are saying in Windows world that init container has to be a separate privileged container or a separate pod that programs for that pod. Does it make sense?
And can it, from the root compartment, can it program that sort of traffic capture, the equivalent of what we do with IP tables in Linux?
Absolutely.
And it can do that in the compartment?
In the default compartment. The default compartment is like the root level permission. So it can see all other compartments.
Okay, so you can traverse down into, so, and obviously whatever's setting up that traffic capture is aware that it's on Windows. It's not trying to exec IP tables.
Correct.
That's not so bad if it's only init containers because those are serialized.
Yeah. We are talking only init containers, yes.
But it's hard to establish the rule about, like, well, what happens if I run a privileged non-init container?
I'm saying we should block it for Windows only. What I'm trying to say is, I mean, I think that violates the principle, basically, the Kubernetes principle, the networking requirement.
Okay. So you're saying only allow privileged for init containers, and it comes with the implicit linkage that if you run a privileged init container, you're going to run in the root namespace, whether you want to or not.
Yes.
And if you try to use privileged on a non-init container, it will fail.
Yes. I'm asking for feedback here.
Yeah. It's not the worst thing I've ever heard.
Do you know, does anybody spin up an init container that, can you attach init containers to services and then expect them to be on one network interface and they're actually on the host network interface? Or you can't do that? Because I don't know if anybody spins them up, waits for a message to come in, process, die, then start the rest of the stack up. The rest of the stack being the rest of the pod.
I'm sure somebody does.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody runs something that waits for the first health check to pass and then it unblocks the load balancer or something, right?
Yeah, I've seen people doing that sort of thing plenty of times in the past, but I don't know if they're doing that on Windows, right? Like if you're running Windows pods, they're behaving pretty differently usually.
I mean, it's effectively what we do with readiness gates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. So if a customer wants to run the init container to configure something within the namespace, wouldn't that be just nullified? If the init container is in root?
I'm interpreting the answer before as the init container can traverse down into the compartment, but it won't run in the compartment. If that makes sense.
Yes, it runs on the host. Like think of like a root partition. Root partition has a default compartment. Anything you run there under privileged will be able to see all other compartments that we create on that host on behalf of other silos.
So there's another suggestion in the chat. Another option was to not call them privileged and just use Windows security context to turn this type of functionality on. Is that better or worse? I don't know the Windows isms enough.
So if we do that, the daemon set use case, see, the security service mesh is one use case, but the other use case is daemon set with privileged and host network, which is what most of the Calico overlay daemons that run today. And that was another reason why we did this feature, right? So I don't know how daemon set will work if we do this.
So the reason I was just saying that was because the pod spec itself, when we try to do validations for a specific OS, we don't know what OS that pod is for. And so it gets a little tricky. And so if we put that, we have something like the GMSA GMSA spec, which lives on the security context, and it's under a Windows specific level there. And so if we put it on that, then we could turn that on for all containers, and we'd be able to do the type of validation that we needed to there.
When we run, apologies for my ignorance, when we run a daemon set today in a mixed OS cluster, is it one daemon set for both OS nodes, or is it one daemon set for Windows and one daemon set for Linux?
So you can do one for both, and that's where if you have a multi-arch image manifest, then you can't determine if you're running on Windows or Linux at the API level.
Right. So I'm asking, I guess, because I would assume that if I was trying to run one daemon set on all my nodes, regardless of OS, I would want to specify both the Windows security stuff and the Linux security stuff on the daemon set. Is that what we do?
So we do have, this came up over the last month or two. There was a few cases where customers were applying Linux specific security constraints, and they were failing to schedule the Windows pods because of that kind of scenario. Yeah.
How would you run a daemon set across both nodes? I mean, at all, the way people run things on Windows right now, right?
I mean, in theory, most of the pod spec is portable enough. And if you, like the parts that aren't portable, if you specified both the Windows and the Linux, then whichever OS they land on, it would interpret them the appropriate way. A multi-arch, multi-OS manifest works fine, right? I truly have no idea what the done thing is, because I just don't have any experience on the Windows side of this right now. So we should probably move forward to whatever else is on the agenda. Yeah, there's a bunch of things. I'll put the KEP in my queue and read it. I would suggest other people do the same.
Thanks for bringing this up, by the way. This is important to a lot of us. So thanks to y'all for coming today for sure.
Yeah, sorry, and I don't mean to like try to dodge the question here. I honestly don't know. I got to read the KEP and think about what the questions I have are.
Should we reconvene in 2 weeks to discuss it further then? Is that the next action?
I believe
2 weeks is Thanksgiving.
Yes, 2 weeks
Oh, yeah.
will be Thanksgiving, so we won't be meeting in the official slot then.
We could bring it back to the mailing list though. I mean, we could open a thread on the mailing list. I assume that SIG Windows has already weighed in on the KEP or will weigh in on the KEP, or are you guys looking to us to tell you which decision to make?
We've discussed this with SIG Windows. We're continuing to kind of bring it up with them as we, explore the different scenarios and implications. I think we're looking for your guys's like guidance in a lot of these networking implications. But there's kind of a lot of different stakeholders here that we're getting some, input from to see what the best choice is to move forward.
Okay. Well, off the cuff, what you described, as long as it's restricted to init containers and therefore serialized and incredibly well documented, it's not the worst thing I've heard, and I feel like I could probably live with it. I do worry about the possible extension to non-init containers, or when the init, there's a discussion going on within SIG node around pod lifecycle, which could change the way init containers work, or at least expand the way init containers work. And we'd have to be careful about this too.
Okay, that is good input. And yeah, I guess it would be good to get some input on the KEP, and we can chat again in a couple weeks.
Okay, yeah, either a month from now we'll have another meeting, I guess 4 weeks, or bring it on the mailing list.
Yeah, Amber, if it's okay, I'd like to start a mailing list thread, or if you all start a mailing list thread, that way we could keep this conversation going.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. Yeah, well, there's not a ton of time till January. A lot of holiday months.
Yeah.
Yeah, mailing list sounds really good to me too. I know there are a couple of folks on my team who would really like to look at this and be involved.
Okay.
For quick broader context,
Thanks.
the reason why this is exciting is it's going to make it so that all the Windows providers have way less technical debt to carry if we can pull off this privileged containers thing. That's why it would be great.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. Bridget, I think you're up next.
Okay, even though I wrote a bunch of stuff, it is actually a very short question, which is just as I started looking at updating a very old CAP, I thought to myself, and in discussion with Lockie, I was like, maybe I should just be reformatting this to the new format. But then I noticed some people from this call had been updating that old one. So maybe there's a reason to keep it the old way. Obviously, I wouldn't like destroy the paper trail. I would still link through from the old name to the new one. But I'm just curious what the structure desired there is.
I would like for people to move to the new format. I tried doing it in bulk, and it turned out to just be way more difficult in bulk than I could do. So I'm asking people as I review CAPs, just convert.
Will do. Awesome. That is a very easy answer. And then the other question I had is Anthony gave me helpful feedback and a link to a different old, hey, moving this to beta. And that kind of looked like a single standalone thing. But as far as I can tell, we currently are now just keeping everything in the one like 563-IPv4, IPv6, whatever, and then putting the like alpha to beta graduated in just the one. Is that the current?
Yeah, aggregate that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. That is all on that topic.
Thanks, Bridget. Jay, you were the last item.
Oh yeah, that policy thing. So went over it with some of the Red Hat folks, and Antonio helped us a lot. We tested it on OVN and found some issues there. This is the policy truth tables validation stuff. And so Matt kind of took over a lot of the code, finished cleaning it up. And so I think we just need, I think Antonio's review is mostly done. Is that correct, Antonio? So we need maybe someone, I think maybe either Bowie or Tim or someone maybe from Google might be good, because I feel like we've kind of got a pretty good broad set of eyes on it so far.
So let me ask the question of the day. Is this something that if I don't look at before the end of today, will miss the boat for 20 and then everybody will be really mad at me? Or can it wait till like next week?
Yeah.
This is for test freeze. So I think that we have 1 week more. We are talking about the test suite, no?
Yeah.
Okay. We have the test freezes in, I don't know, next week or the week after. I don't remember.
Okay. All right. Then I will tell you it's already flagged in my queue. I just deprioritized for this week because of code freeze.
Oh, I think Bowie said he could do it, which might maybe be. Oh, is he talking about IPv4 or? Okay. Yeah, either one of y'all actually is fine. Tim or Bowie, either one's is great. Okay.
Yeah, more the merrier.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the one quick thing about it that I wanted to kind of bring up as a group. I know Casey, you and me talked a little bit about this on Slack once. Matt, I don't know if he's still here. He had an idea of re-expressing all the policies as, because again, we have like 10 or 15 more tests that we're going to be putting in that are related to UDP and stuff like that, as YAML, as a way to make them extremely readable. And we have like one test that does that, and it's really nice to look at. And so and I think you had made the point once that like making a new DSL up for defining these things is extra work, and it creates a third way of expressing policies other than the normal two that normal people do. So curious if anybody feels like expressing those policies in YAML inside of the test. If we were to do that for the other few tests, whether that would be a good path forward. Or
are you saying YAML as opposed to constructing the object directly, or is there JSON in the test somewhere? Like, what form are they currently in?
They're all were Go structs.
Okay.
And so, because one of the things that, there have been issues filed about people not really knowing what certain policies do and stuff. So one of the nice things is we can, in addition to being able to understand the tests better, we can actually point people at canonical, how those policies get applied. And in general, it reduces the amount of code as the amount of tests we had increases. It's not done though right now. I don't think we embed YAML in a lot of Go code right now in the end-to-end framework. So we wouldn't go doing this unless there was at least somebody told me it wasn't a totally crazy idea. It works though.
Are you talking about YAML like a new custom schema, or just like regular API YAML?
Just API YAML, just like literally copy pasting, literally. Right now what we do in the tests is we take the API object and we print it out in the logs, and then we print the truth table underneath. So literally, we would literally be taking the output of the Go serialization of those Go structs and literally embedding it in the code. You don't have to answer right now. When you're like looking at the code, you'll see what I mean. Because for one of the tests, we did that just as a way of like, look, we could do this for the other ones. You'll know what I'm talking about, I think, when you're looking at it.
Okay. From a high level, I don't have any objection to anything that makes tests more readable and maintainable.
Yeah. Okay. So that's it. I mean, you don't have to. That's enough. Yeah. If you could give us a look next week, that would be really great, because I know Rich has a bunch of other UDP related tests that he wants to add.
Okay.
Okay.
So it looks like we're at the end of our agenda then. I'll put out one more time code freezes today. I am working through all the PRs that I've been working on in the last 2 weeks. We've made great progress, or at least I feel like we have. A bunch of PRs that have been sitting around for a long time are actually making it through. If anybody here feels like they need me specifically to look at a PR today before the end of the day, please ping me on Slack and let me know ASAP so that I can try to take a look at it. No promises, but I'll try.
Tim, are you going to merge the refactor of the services REST with the?
No, that is not going to happen today.
That's a tough one. No?
Yeah, no, that requires too many eyes from too many places, and everybody is in the same boat as me. There's a lot of important things to review before the code freeze. That's just not going to happen. So that we can queue up for 21.
Cool. So like Tim said, that was the end of the agenda. Unless there are any last minute topics, I think we are done.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. We won't have a meeting in 2 weeks. The next one will be in 4 weeks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Take care.
Thanks.